Adam Zampa's life had always looked perfect from the outside. To the world, he was the symbol of success. A self-made millionaire, owner of several tech companies, a man who lived in a mansion so grand that journalists often called it the palace on the hill. But behind the polished glass walls, the manicured gardens and the glittering cars in his driveway, Adam carried a private storm inside his home. His twin daughters, Sophie and Sarah, were only 6 years old, but their presence could fill the entire mansion with noise, chaos, and never-ending quarrels. They were identical in appearance, both with golden hair that shimmered in the sunlight and big blue eyes that could melt any stranger's heart. Yet their personalities clashed like fire and water. Sophie was loud, commanding, and possessive of everything she touched, while Sarah was equally stubborn, fiery, and unwilling to ever back down. Their fights were infamous. The nannies Adam had hired before never lasted more than a few weeks. Some had resigned in tears, others had simply vanished overnight, unable to endure the constant screaming, the toy-throwing battles, and the endless complaints of, "She took my doll," or "That's mine!" On a bright Monday morning, the mansion once again trembled with their conflict. "Stop touching my stuff," Sophie shrieked, pulling at a pink stuffed bunny that Sarah clutched with all her strength. "It's not yours, it's mine," Sarah yelled back, her little face red with fury. The two girls pulled and pushed, their high-pitched voices echoing through the high-ceilinged living room. The marble floor was scattered with Lego pieces, half-built castles, and abandoned toy cars. A glass vase shook dangerously on a side table as their tug-of-war grew violent. From the corner of the room, Adam stood in his crisp blue suit, his head buried in his hands. He had just returned from a business meeting, and the last thing he wanted was to step into yet another battlefield. His temples throbbed as he listened to their screams. "Enough!" he tried to say, his voice stern but weary. Yet the twins didn't even hear him. They were lost in their own war. Just then, the door opened, and in walked Anam, the new nanny Adam had reluctantly hired only 3 days ago. She was in her late 20s, with an air of calm determination that set her apart from the others before her. Dressed neatly in a light blue uniform, she carried herself not like someone intimidated by wealth, but like someone who had come with a purpose. Her sharp eyes immediately caught the sight of the twins wrestling on the floor. For a brief second, she hesitated. After all, she had been warned by the mansion staff that the girls are impossible. But instead of rushing to pull them apart like the others would have done, she quietly placed her handbag on the table and observed. Adam noticed her presence and muttered in exhaustion, "Good luck, Anam. I doubt you'll last here more than a week." But Anam didn't reply. She walked slowly towards the twins, crouched near them, and in a calm yet firm voice said, "Girls, look at me." Her tone wasn't loud, but it carried a weight of authority that momentarily surprised Sophie and Sarah. Their little hands froze mid-pull. "Do you see what's happening right now?" Anam asked, her eyes moving from one twin to the other. "She stole my bunny," Sophie shouted immediately. "No, it's mine." "She's lying," Sarah retorted. Anam didn't react to their accusations. Instead, she asked, "What's more important, this toy or your sister?" The question hung in the air like an invisible wall. The twins looked at her blankly, almost confused by her words. No one had ever asked them that before. Adults usually scolded, threatened, or separated them, but here was someone demanding they think. Adam, still covering his face, peeked through his fingers. He was skeptical, but something about Anam's approach made him lower his hands and watch. The silence didn't last long, of course. Sophie broke it with a defiant tone. "The bunny," she declared. "Yeah, the bunny," Sarah echoed, crossing her arms. Anam nodded slowly, not showing disappointment. "All right, then I'll take the bunny." She gently pulled it out of their hands, surprising both of them. She walked to the fireplace and placed it high on the mantel, out of their reach. The twins gasped. "Hey, that's not fair!" "You'll get it back," Anam said softly. "But only when you both decide it matters less than your relationship. Until then, it stays there." The girls stomped their little feet and pouted, but neither dared snatch it back. Something about Anam's calm yet unshakable manner restrained them. Adam watched with raised eyebrows. In 6 years, no one had dared challenge his daughters like this. Most caretakers either surrendered to their demands or tried to bribe them with new toys. Anam, however, had simply flipped the rules. But the morning chaos wasn't over yet. As soon as Anam turned away, Sophie shoved Sarah lightly, whispering, "You're still a thief," Sarah shoved back. "No, you are." Their voices rose again, and Adam groaned, rubbing his forehead. "Here we go again." Yet before the storm could explode, Anam clapped her hands sharply. The sound startled them. "Girls, if you want to fight, then we'll fight, but with rules." The twins blinked, confused. "What rules?" Sarah asked suspiciously. Anam smiled faintly. "If you want to prove who's right, you don't use hands, screams, or shoves. You use your brains. I'll ask you both questions, and whoever answers better gets to decide what happens to the bunny." This caught their attention. For the first time, they weren't being told to stop fighting. Instead, they were given a challenge, a game. Sophie and Sarah exchanged curious glances, their little eyes shining with both rivalry and excitement. Adam leaned against the wall, half amused, half intrigued. "What are you doing?" he whispered to Anam. "Turning their fight into focus," she replied quietly, her tone confident. And so the living room transformed into an unexpected stage. The twins sat cross-legged on the carpet facing Anam, who began asking them simple riddles and puzzles. "What has to be broken before you can use it?" she asked. "An egg!" Sophie shouted immediately. Anam nodded. "Good. 1 point for Sophie." Sarah scowled, determined to win the next round. The game continued, laughter mixing with shouts of triumph and groans of defeat. For the first time that morning, the girls weren't pulling each other's hair or throwing toys. They were focused, engaged, and strangely cooperative. Adam stood in disbelief. The mansion, once a battlefield, now echoed with something he hadn't heard in a long time, his daughter's joyful voices without anger. But deep inside, Adam also felt something stir. Could this nanny really succeed where everyone else had failed? Or was this just a temporary illusion before the storm returned? He didn't know the answer yet, but one thing was clear. Anam was not an ordinary nanny. She was a woman with patience, strategy, and an unusual courage to stand against chaos, and this was only the beginning. The next few days in Adam Zampa's mansion revealed just how unusual Anam truly was. Unlike the long list of nannies who had come and gone, she didn't flinch at the tantrums, nor did she shrink in front of the twins' piercing screams. Instead, she carried herself with a quiet authority, as though she'd been preparing for this job her whole life. Adam, however, remained doubtful. He was a man used to controlling empires, but when it came to his children, he felt powerless. Every time he came home from his board meetings, he half expected to see Anam packing her bags. Her patience shattered like the others before her. But Anam stayed. On the third morning of her employment, the mansion once again echoed with a familiar scene. Sophie and Sarah standing in the kitchen, arguing over who should get the first pancake. Their high-pitched quarrel bounced against the marble walls, and the household staff stood frozen, unsure whether to intervene or to simply wait for the storm to pass. "I'm the older twin by 3 minutes." Sophie shouted. "That doesn't mean anything." Sarah barked back. "I want it first." Anam calmly placed the pancake platter on the counter and looked at both of them. "All right," she said. "If you both want it, you'll have to earn it." The twins stared at her suspiciously. "How?" Sarah asked. Anam leaned closer, lowering her voice as though she was sharing a secret. With teamwork, their jaws dropped. "What?" Adam, who had just entered the kitchen in his grey tailored suit, raised his eyebrows. "Teamwork. Anam, they don't even last 30 seconds without pulling each other's hair." But Anam didn't waver. She pulled out 2 aprons and handed one to each girl. "If you both can make me 1 pancake together without fighting, you'll get this first one as a reward." Sophie crossed her arms. "That's impossible," Sarah smirked. "She'll ruin it, not me." "Then prove me wrong," Anam challenged, tying her own apron. The kitchen staff exchanged curious glances, their faces lighting up with suppressed amusement. Never had they seen anyone invite the twins into the kitchen, let alone make them cook. And so, the impossible began. Sophie cracked the egg with too much force, spilling half of it on the counter. Sarah laughed, mocking her clumsiness. Quiet, Anam said firmly, sliding the bowl closer. You both get another chance. Cooking isn't about being perfect, it's about patience. Sarah added flour, Sophie poured milk, and together they stirred. At first their hands collided, their elbows knocked, and their voices rose in bickering. But slowly, under Anam's steady guidance, they began to find a rhythm. Careful, Sarah. Stir clockwise, Anam instructed. Now, Sophie, you hold the pan steady. Minutes later, a golden pancake sat on the plate. Lopsided, slightly burnt at the edges, but real. The girls looked at it in awe. For once, it wasn't about winning against each other. It was about what they had created together. Adam stood silently in the doorway, his coffee untouched in his hand. Something inside him stirred again. He had never seen his daughters cooperate like this before. Not even once. Congratulations, Anam said warmly, placing the first pancake in front of them. This belongs to both of you. You can cut it in half, or you can share it bite by bite. The girls glanced at each other. Sophie hesitated, then picked up a fork, slicing a piece and offering it to Sarah. Sarah blinked, surprised, but accepted it. The staff gasped softly, some even smiling behind their hands. Adam nearly dropped his coffee mug. Was this progress? But the calm didn't last long. Later that afternoon, the twins were back to fighting over crayons in the drawing room. She took the red one, Sophie cried. No, I grabbed it first, Sarah screamed. Anam entered, carrying a basket of art supplies. Instead of scolding, she sat down between them. You're both right, she said. You both love red. So let's make a rule. Whenever you fight over one crayon, you must use it together on the same picture. What? The twins chorused. Yes, no separate drawings. One paper, one picture. Two artists. They resisted at first, but Anam began sketching a simple house outline and handed them the red crayon. Why don't you make it into a palace with me? She offered. Before they knew it, Sophie was coloring the roof while Sarah filled in the bricks. The paper came alive with bold strokes, laughter mixing with playful competition. By the end, the twins proudly held up their masterpiece, a messy but colorful house drawn together. Adam watched from the staircase, his heart caught between relief and wonder. He had spent years pouring money into solutions, therapists, private teachers, the best toys money could buy. Yet here was a woman who used no expensive tricks, only patience and strategy, and somehow she was achieving what no one else could. That evening, as the twins finally dozed off in their pink princess-themed bedroom, Adam found himself in the library, staring at the fire while Anam tidied up books on the shelf. You're different, he said quietly. Anam paused. Different how? Every nanny before you either quit or begged me to send the girls to boarding school. But you're not running. You're not even complaining. Instead, He struggled for words, turning their chaos into something meaningful. Anam smiled faintly. Children don't fight because they're bad. They fight because they don't know how to express themselves. All they need is guidance, not punishment. Adam studied her, his sharp business mind unexpectedly curious. And how do you know this works? Her eyes darkened for a second, as though a memory flashed behind them. Because I grew up in a house where no one taught us how to stop fighting. I know what it feels like when love is buried under noise. Adam leaned back, intrigued. There was more to Anam than she revealed. The fire crackled in the silence. Outside, the city lights glittered, but inside the mansion, for the first time in years, Adam felt a fragile sense of hope. Yet he also knew his daughters well. Their fights weren't gone. They were only tamed. And somewhere deep down, he feared the storm would return. And when it did, would Anam truly be able to withstand it? He didn't know the answer yet, but he wanted to believe, because in just a few days, Anam had already done the impossible. She had brought peace, however brief, to a house of chaos, and Adam Zampa, millionaire businessman, master of control, suddenly found himself wondering if this quiet, determined nanny might be the only person who could save his family from falling apart. The Zampa mansion glowed under the afternoon sun, its tall windows reflecting the city skyline. From the outside, it looked unshakable, but inside, Adam knew his home was still fragile. For all of Anam's progress with the twins, the storms were never far away. It began on a Friday evening. Adam had just returned from a long meeting when he heard the unmistakable shrieks echoing from the playroom. He froze in the hallway, his jaw tightening. For a moment, he wanted to turn back, retreat to his office, and drown the noise with work. But something made him stay. Mine, Sophie screamed. No, it's mine, Sarah yelled, clutching a shiny music box in her small hands. The ornate box had belonged to their late mother, a woman whose absence still haunted the mansion's walls. Neither twin truly remembered her, but they both felt an instinctive attachment to the things she had left behind. The music box had been sitting untouched in the storage room until one of them had stumbled upon it. Now it was a new reason for war. Adam's heart clenched. That box had been one of his wife's treasures. To see it turned into a weapon between his daughters tore at him. Anam was already in the room, kneeling at the girl's level. Unlike Adam, she didn't look panicked. Her face was calm, her voice steady. "Girls," she said softly, "do you know what this box is?" Sophie tightened her grip, glaring at Sarah. "It's mine now." Sarah pulled back, her cheeks flushed. "No, I found it first." Anam gently touched the lid of the box. "This isn't just a toy. This was your mother's. Do you think she would want you fighting over it?" The twins hesitated. The word mother still carried weight, even though it was wrapped in mystery for them. Adam stepped inside, his voice low but firm. She would never want her daughters to fight like this. For a rare moment, both girls fell silent, their eyes flicking between their father and Anam. Then Sophie whispered, "But if we share it, who gets to keep it in their room?" The question lingered in the air, heavier than any scream. Anam thought for a moment, then surprised everyone with her answer. "Neither. If it's so precious, then it belongs somewhere both of you can see it." "How about the library?" "That way it doesn't belong to one. It belongs to the family," Sarah frowned. "But then it's not mine." "And not mine either," Sophie added. "That's right," Anam said gently. "It's bigger than both of you," the girls pouted. But Adam saw something change in their eyes, a flicker of thought, a pause in their selfishness. Reluctantly, they carried the music box together into the library, setting it on a high shelf where both could admire it. For once they didn't scream. They simply stared at it in silence, as though sensing the invisible presence of the mother they never knew. That night, after the twins were tucked in, Adam found Anam alone in the library, staring at the music box herself. Her expression was unreadable, but there was a quiet sadness in her eyes. "You handled that well," Adam said softly. She turned, startled, then gave a small smile. Children fight over things they believe define them, but sometimes they need to learn that not everything can, or should, belong to them. Adam studied her for a moment. "You sound like you've been through this before." Anam hesitated, then replied, "Let's just say, I grew up in a house where love was hidden behind locked cabinets and closed doors. I promised myself that no child under my care would ever feel that way." Her voice trembled slightly, though she quickly masked it with a calm expression. Adam didn't press further, but a question burned inside him. "Who are you really, Anam?" The following day tested them again. The twins were invited to a birthday party of a wealthy friend's daughter. Adam insisted they attend, hoping it would help them socialize. But at the party, chaos followed them like a shadow. The moment they saw a giant chocolate cake at the center table, Sophie declared, "I'm blowing out the candles." "No, I am," Sarah shot back, hands on her hips. The guests began whispering, watching the Zampa twins battle in front of a crowd. Adam's face flushed with embarrassment. He was about to intervene when Anam stepped forward. "Girls," she said sharply, her voice cutting through the chatter. "This isn't your party. Do you know what happens when you try to take something that doesn't belong to you?" Sophie frowned. "What?" Anam crouched down to their level. "You lose something even more important, your respect. Do you want all these children to remember you as the girls who ruined a birthday? Or do you want them to remember you as the sisters who made it special?" The twins froze, their pride colliding with their desire for admiration. Finally, Sarah mumbled, "Special." Sophie crossed her arms but reluctantly nodded. Anam guided them to the birthday girl and whispered something in their ears. Moments later, the twins stood beside her, clapping loudly and cheering as the candles were blown out. The crowd erupted in applause. And for once, the Zampa twins weren't seen as troublemakers, but as part of the celebration. Adam, standing at the edge of the crowd, felt his chest tighten, not with stress but with pride. Anam had once again turned disaster into harmony. Yet as the night drew to a close, Adam realized something troubling. His daughters were growing attached to Anam. Every night they asked for her bedtime stories. Every morning they looked for her first. They listened to her in ways they never listened to him. And deep down, Adam wondered, was he losing his role as a father? Or was Anam simply giving him a second chance to reclaim it? He didn't know. But one thing was certain, this fragile peace could not last forever. Because every storm, no matter how tamed, eventually returns. And when it did, the question remained, would Anam's calm methods be enough? Or would the mansion of chaos finally collapse? The fragile peace Anam had built inside the Zampa mansion lasted longer than anyone expected. For nearly 3 weeks, the twins' fights were fewer, their laughter louder, and their cooperation, though inconsistent, more visible than it had ever been. Adam began to believe that maybe, just maybe, his house was finally becoming a home. But peace is a fragile thing, especially when pride and jealousy live under the same roof. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon when the storm returned. The sky outside the mansion was dark, the windows streaked with raindrops, and the sound of thunder rumbled across the hills. Inside, Sophie and Sarah sat in the playroom surrounded by crayons, dolls, and puzzles. For a while, they worked quietly, coloring separate pictures. Then Sophie looked over at Sarah's drawing. She had sketched a castle, tall and majestic, with pink towers and blue flags. Sophie's face twisted. "That's ugly," she said sharply. "My castle is way better." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "No, it's not. Yours looks like a box. Mine looks like a real palace." Within seconds, crayons flew. Sophie snatched Sarah's drawing and crumpled it into a ball. Sarah screamed, lunging at her sister, clawing and pushing. Their shrieks rose higher, echoing through the mansion like sirens. Adam was in his office upstairs when the noise reached him. He slammed his pen down, his patience snapping. For weeks he had trusted Anam's methods, watched her tame the chaos with patience. But now, hearing the screams return at full force, he felt rage boiling in his chest. Storming downstairs, he entered the playroom. The sight made his blood run hot. Sarah was pulling Sophie's hair while Sophie kicked at her sister's shins. Toys were scattered, crayons broken, and their once innocent faces twisted with fury. "Stop it!" Adam roared. The girls froze for a moment, their father's booming voice slicing through the room. But instead of retreating, they turned on each other again, crying, "She started it!" Adam's chest rose and fell heavily. He was a man who could silence a room full of CEOs with a single glance, yet his daughters defied him as though he were nothing more than a shadow. His helplessness twisted into something darker, anger not just at them, but at himself. That was when Anam entered. She had been in the kitchen, helping the staff prepare lunch when she heard the screams. Now she stood at the doorway, her expression calm but her eyes sharp, immediately assessing the battlefield. "Enough," she said firmly, stepping between the twins. She crouched down, her hands gently but firmly separating them. "This isn't about drawings or castles. This is about respect. They don't respect anything." Adam snapped, his voice like thunder. His frustration spilled out, not just at the twins, but at the months, years, of living in chaos. "I've had it, Anam. They scream, they fight, they ruin everything. Maybe the world is right. Maybe boarding school is the only solution." The words hung in the air like daggers. The twins froze, their small bodies trembling. Their wide eyes filled with fear, then betrayal. "Boarding school?" Sophie whispered. You want to send us away?" Sarah asked, her voice breaking. Adam felt the weight of their eyes on him, but his pride refused to bend. "If you can't behave like a family, then maybe you don't deserve to stay in one." Silence followed, broken only by the patter of rain outside. The twins burst into tears, clutching each other, not out of love, but out of shared fear. For the first time, they weren't fighting each other. They were united against their father's words. Anam's heart twisted. She placed her hands on their shoulders, her voice steady but fierce. "Adam, stop." He turned to her, his jaw tight. "Don't tell me how to raise my daughters." I'm not telling you, Anam said, her tone firm. I'm begging you. Don't let your anger speak for you. They're children. They don't need punishment, they need guidance. You can't threaten them into love. Adam's fists clenched at his sides. He had spent years commanding boardrooms, controlling billions in assets. But in this moment, he felt utterly powerless. And Anam's words cut deeper than he wanted to admit. The twins clung to each other, sobbing. Please, Papa, Sophie cried. We don't want to go away. We'll be good, we promise. Sarah added, her small voice shaking. Adam's anger cracked, guilt rushing in like a tide. His daughter's tears pierced him more than any business failure ever could. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Anam drew in a slow breath. Girls, she said softly, go upstairs to your room for a while. I'll bring you something warm to drink. Reluctantly, still clinging to each other, the twins obeyed. Their small footsteps echoed up the staircase, leaving Adam and Anam alone in the stormy silence of the playroom. Adam sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. I don't know what to do anymore, he muttered. I can't control them. I can't control myself. Maybe I'm not fit to be their father. Anam knelt beside him, her voice quiet but strong. You are their father. That's why they look at you the way they do, because they crave your approval. They don't need a perfect man. They just need a present one. Adam lifted his head, his eyes weary. And what if I fail them again? Then you try again, Anam said firmly. Because that's what love is. Not perfection, not control, just persistence. For a long moment, Adam stared at her. In her calm eyes, he saw something he hadn't seen in years. Faith. Not blind optimism, but the steady belief that broken things could still be mended. Outside, the thunder eased, the rain softening into a drizzle. Inside, Adam felt the first fragile threads of hope begin to knit themselves again. But as the silence settled, a question gnawed at him. Anam had stood by his daughters with a fierceness he hadn't expected. She fought for them as though they were her own, and in that realization came another thought, one that unsettled him. Why did she care so much? There was something in her past, something she wasn't telling him. He could feel it in the weight of her words, in the shadow that passed across her eyes when she spoke of families and fights. The mansion was calmer now, but Adam knew the truth. The real storm wasn't the twins. It was the secrets yet to be revealed, and he feared that when they surfaced, his world and his daughters would never be the same again. The house had grown quieter in the weeks following the lakeside breakthrough. For the first time since Adam Zampa had brought his twins back from the hospital as infants, the mansion no longer echoed with endless fights and stubborn cries. Instead, there were giggles, whispers of secrets shared between the sisters, and even the occasional sight of them holding hands as they walked down the marble halls. Adam watched in disbelief most days, unsure if what he was witnessing was real or a fragile dream that might collapse at any moment. The transformation was undeniable, but one question haunted him. What had Anam done that he could not? The truth was, Anam had done something far greater than Adam expected. She hadn't just managed the twins. She had healed them. Anam's secret approach late one evening. Adam found himself outside the twins' playroom. The door was slightly ajar, and laughter spilled out, warm and innocent. He leaned against the wall, hesitant, not wanting to interrupt. Inside, Anam knelt between the girls, holding a shoebox covered in stickers. She carefully lifted the lid, revealing colorful notes, small drawings, and a pair of worn-out baby bracelets. These are your stories, Anam said gently. When you were born, your mother made these bracelets for you. She wanted you to always remember that you were two parts of one heart. The girl's eyes widened. Emma traced the tiny bracelet with her finger, while Eliza leaned closer, her usual impatience replaced by curiosity. Why didn't Daddy tell us this? Emma asked softly, and Anam paused. Because sometimes grown-ups forget how important little things are. But now you know, you're not just sisters, you're twins. A gift that can't be broken. Adam's chest tightened as he realized Anam wasn't just teaching them discipline, she was teaching them connection. A business storm while peace settled at home. Chaos brewed outside. Adam's empire, built on real estate and luxury brands, was facing its toughest season. A rival company was undercutting his prices, and rumors of betrayal within his boardroom spread like wildfire. For the first time in years, Adam couldn't focus on his business the way he wanted. His mind lingered at home, with the twins, with Anam. Yet responsibilities couldn't be ignored. One evening, his advisor barged into his study. "Adam, we're losing millions. If you don't attend tomorrow's board meeting, you might lose control over your own company." Adam rubbed his temples, torn. Tomorrow was also the twins' school recital, the first time they had agreed to perform together. He had promised them he'd be there. The nanny's bold step Anam found him pacing later that night, exhaustion heavy on his face. "You're going to miss their recital, aren't you?" she asked softly. Adam looked at her, guilt flickering in his eyes. "If I don't go to the meeting, I could lose everything. The houses, the company, the future I built for them. How can I risk that?" Anam stepped closer, her tone firm yet kind. "Adam, your daughters don't need mansions or a fleet of cars. They need you. For years they fought for your attention in the only way they knew how, by screaming, by competing. Tomorrow, they're finally standing side by side. If you're not there, that wound may never heal completely." Her words pierced through him. But before he could reply, Anam made a decision of her own. "If you can't go," she said, "then I'll make sure the recital doesn't just happen. I'll bring it to you." Adam frowned, confused. But Anam's determined expression told him she had a plan no one expected. The day of the recital. The next morning, Adam was chauffeured to the company headquarters, his mind clouded with regret. Meanwhile, Anam dressed the twins in matching white dresses with blue ribbons. She held their small hands and whispered, "Don't worry. Your father will see you." At school, the auditorium filled with parents, teachers, and students. The twins stood nervously on stage, their eyes scanning the crowd. Emma's lips trembled. "Daddy's not here," she whispered. Eliza clenched her fists, about to retreat, but Anam bent down quickly. "Look at me," she said firmly. "Your father believes in you. And he is watching." She gestured to a small camera she had set up earlier. It was live streaming directly to Adam's office. A father's revelation back at the boardroom. Adam sat at the long mahogany table surrounded by sharp-suited executives. His phone buzzed. Reluctantly, he opened the stream. His heart skipped a beat. There they were, his daughters, standing together, hands clasped, facing the stage lights. Their voices rang out in perfect harmony, a song about unity and family. Adam's vision blurred as tears filled his eyes. For the first time, he saw them not as bickering children, but as a team, brave and resilient. And he saw Anam, standing in the wings, her gaze steady, her faith in them unshakable. He didn't hear the voices around the boardroom anymore. He only heard his daughters. When the song ended, the audience erupted in applause. The twins bowed, smiling shyly, and for the first time, they turned not to the empty chair where their father should have been, but to Anam, their anchor, their bridge. The aftermath that evening. Adam returned home earlier than anyone expected. The twins ran to him, their recital ribbons fluttering. He knelt, pulling them both into his arms. "I saw everything," he whispered, his voice breaking. "I'm so proud of you," Emma smiled through tears. "But you weren't there." Adam shook his head. "I was there in the only way I could be. But Anam made sure I didn't miss it. She gave me something no boardroom, no company, no empire could ever replace." He looked up at Anam, his eyes filled with gratitude deeper than words. "You've done more than care for my children," he said quietly. "You've cared for their souls." For Adam, the choice was no longer about business or family. It was about what truly mattered, and Anam had shown him the answer without demanding anything in return. The mansion was quiet that night. The recital ribbons still lay on the marble counter, and the faint scent of flowers lingered in the air. Adam Zampa sat alone in his study, replaying the live stream in his head. Every note of his daughter's song echoed like a lesson he had ignored for years. For decades, Adam had believed wealth was the only shield he could offer his children. But today he realized he had been protecting them from the wrong things. They didn't need his empire. They needed his presence, and Anam had given it to them, in ways he never could. The confrontation. Later that evening, Adam asked Anam to join him in the garden. The twins had finally fallen asleep, their recital medals clutched tightly in their hands. "You've changed them," Adam said softly, his voice almost breaking. "I tried tutors, expensive schools, therapists, but none of them worked. And yet, in just months, you've turned two rivals into sisters again." Anam lowered her gaze, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "I didn't change them, Adam. They were always meant to be this way. I just reminded them of what they'd forgotten." Adam studied her face, searching for answers. "Why, Anam? Why go so far? You live-streamed their recital, carried their pain like it was your own. No nanny would ever do that." Her silence was telling. The unexpected. Truth finally, Anam exhaled and spoke the words that stunned him. "I wasn't just hired to look after them." "I knew your wife," Adam froze. His heart thundered in his chest. "You what?" Anam's eyes glistened. "Before she passed, she and I were close. She trusted me with things she never told anyone. When she became ill, she asked me, begged me, that if anything ever happened to her, I would make sure the girls never forgot her love." Adam staggered back, the revelation hitting him like a tidal wave. "My wife." His voice cracked. She never told me. She didn't want to burden you," Anam whispered. "She said you'd drown yourself in work. She knew you'd need someone to protect the girls' hearts when you couldn't." At that moment, Adam understood. Anam's unexpected act wasn't just kindness. It was loyalty beyond measure. She had carried a promise into his home and fulfilled it, even when it broke her own heart. The twins over here, unbeknownst to them, the twins had crept to the hallway, sleepy but curious. Emma clutched Eliza's hand as they listened. "So that's why Anam knows so much about Mommy," Emma whispered. Eliza's eyes welled with tears. "She's not just our nanny. She's family." They ran into the garden, throwing their arms around Anam. "Thank you," Emma sobbed. "Thank you for not letting us forget Mommy." Eliza buried her face in Anam's lap. "We love you." Anam froze, overwhelmed, then pulled them close, whispering through her own tears. "I love you too. More than you'll ever know." Adam stood silently, watching the three of them under the moonlight, realizing this was the family he'd almost lost to pride and negligence. The final test, but life had one last test. The very next week, Adam's company faced an ultimatum. His board demanded he sacrifice more of his time, including trips abroad for months, if he wanted to hold power. For the first time in his career, Adam didn't hesitate. He stood before them, calm and resolute. "I will not choose money over my family again," he declared. "If that means losing this company, so be it." Gasps filled the boardroom. Rivals smirked, expecting his downfall. But Adam didn't care. He had already gained more than any fortune could buy. When he returned home, the twins greeted him with handmade drawings, one of the three of them, Adam, Emma, and Eliza, holding hands with Anam in the middle. Above it, written in uneven childlike letters, "Our family forever," the redefinition of family, that night. Adam gathered everyone in the living room. "I've made a decision," he said, looking at Anam and then his daughters. "From now on, we are not employer and nanny. We are a family. Anam, you're not just part of this house. You're part of our lives." "You always will be," the twins cheered, hugging her tightly. Anam's eyes brimmed with tears. "You don't know what this means to me," she whispered. Adam smiled softly. "I do, because now I finally understand what it means too." Epilogue. Years later, years passed. The twins grew stronger, kinder, inseparable, leaders in their own right. And at every recital, every milestone, Adam sat in the front row, never missing a moment again. Anam was still by their side, not as a nanny, but as a guardian, mentor, and second mother. People often whispered about Adam Zampa, the millionaire who once risked his empire for the sake of his children. But he never corrected them, because the truth was, his real fortune wasn't in business or wealth. It was in the laughter of his daughters, the bond of his family, and the unexpected act of a woman who kept a dying promise and, in doing so, gave them all a second chance at love.